And we're live. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the Work and Play podcast live. I am recording this podcast episode live from my Instagram account. And if you are joining in, then hey, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about when to start a podcast. And before we get into the conversation, I want to talk a little bit about the new format. So as of right now, I'm going live on Instagram Live. The reason that I'm doing that is because as I am sharing these notes to help you get through your journey of starting a podcast, building your professional brand, and really bringing on coaching clients into your business, I want to also allow you guys to ask me questions real time. So that is why the new format. Also, I am recording this podcast and it's going right under the Work and Play podcast. Now, why is that important? Because over the years, I have had very many different formats of the Work and Play podcast. We started off as an interview podcast, and we can go into the decision making and why it was an interview podcast later. But what you need to know is there has been an evolution, as it will be for you. And I need you to feel comfortable with that evolution. So that's why these conversations are going right into the regular Work and Play podcast. Because as you're on your journey to becoming a 6 and 7 figure earner as a coach, a consultant, or a service provider, you are going to evolve and you'll become clearer on many different things along the way. And you will change things, you will pivot, and that is the part of the game. So without further ado, I just wanted to give you guys a highlight on why we are keeping the Work and Play podcast in the same ecosystem of Work and Play podcast. If you scroll back all the way to the very first episode of the Work and Play podcast, you'll see the conversation is and will always be about the transition, just going from a employee to self-employed to an investor to a business owner to an investor. Like, there's a different mindset, and as I'm recording my journey, I think you should also do the same thing. So don't be afraid of just starting where you are, not worrying about what you've done before, or just trying to scrap everything. You don't have to scrap everything to get started. All you need to do is focus on where you're going, and you will absolutely hit the mark. Hey, David. So let's get into it. So we talked about, let's see. Okay. So my promise to you is that these episodes are going to be dropping every single week. We're going to share the journeys of how you actually start the podcast, how do you attract your audience, how do you build your personal brand, and then eventually how you start your coaching business. That's my promise to you. And so we're going to get into the conversation. All right. So who am I and why am I qualified to tell you how you can build your podcast? Well, first of all, this isn't just about podcasting. And that's the part we have to take a step back on. Many people are starting their podcasts because other people have podcasts. And before you actually press record on your podcast, you have to sit there and ask yourself, why do I want to start this platform? So first of all, if you don't have a mission, then maybe a little bit of my story will help you get context into, okay, this is why I want to start the podcast. This is where I'm going with this. So over the years, I started my podcast essentially to grow my business. When I learned about podcasting, I learned that it is a part of your marketing. So I didn't actually come into podcasting from a perspective of I just want to talk and I just want to have like regular conversations on podcasts. However, over the years, I've met so many great and wonderful people who have awesome stories, life-changing experiences, and they ultimately, first of all, just want to get their story out. They want to get it told. You want to get your story heard. And all that is great and wonderful. But many people who start their podcasts like that oftentimes end up down the road regretting the fact that they started a podcast because they're not making any money. And so because I really do love, like, I feel like if I feel like I accidentally landed on podcasting and success in podcasting because I was focused on where's the money in podcasting. And so now that I have experienced some success when it comes to affiliate income, platform income, and then also just monetizing in my business and attracting clients who actually would pay high figure prices, then that is something that we should talk about in the beginning so that you can merge the business part of your podcast, the business foundation of your podcast with your message and your mission. And if you marry those two things together, you will absolutely be on the right track to earning 6 and 7 figures as a coach. So I started my podcast with the idea of this being a marketing arm for my own coaching business. Well, not only did I do that, but I also created and launched 2 businesses for myself. So all of the things that it entails, not just getting your LLC on the Secretary of State's website, but everything from starting the business, creating it, getting clients, getting recurring clients, charging clients, and then delivering that service. All of that was a learning process. And I've gotten resources, coaching, read a whole bunch of books. And these are the things that go into me helping you with your podcast. So again, we're not just talking about creating a platform for you to just tell your story. We're creating an instrument to tell your story and pair your business experience so that you can ultimately make money in the long term. So that's what qualifies me to sit here and tell you that you can absolutely make money on your podcast. It's not that that podcasting has to make you broke or it has to be a really expensive hobby. It's just that you have to start off with the clear foundation and the business principles to make your podcast last. And then you can structure your podcast episodes so that it actually hits the needles in your business. Okay? So we'll talk a lot about how all of that ties into your success as a podcaster. But this episode is basically to address the question that I've been getting in my DMs a bunch. And that is, should I have a podcast right now? I don't know when to start a podcast. When should I start a podcast? It's all in these different ways, but it's always the same. So whether you have a podcast or you're thinking about starting a podcast, this conversation should be helpful for you because you need to think about like your why throughout the entire journey. When people get burned out, not just in podcasting, but especially in podcasting, it's because we lost sight of the vision or the vision isn't actually matching up with our current expectations. And I will tell you this, no matter how long we live on this earth, your finances is going to be an expectation. So you might as well plan ahead. Focus on the mission, but start with the foundation of how am I going to earn money on this podcast? So this conversation is one to just add context to how you can evolve as a podcaster, but to help you understand and clarify when should you start your podcast and what tweaks should you be making if you've already gotten started. So the very first thing, let's go ahead and get into it. When you should start your podcast is when you know you have a story that you want to share, some challenges that you've overcome, life experiences that you've overcome, or a great and wonderful experience that you've experienced, and you want to share that with other people, not just for the benefit of talking, but for the benefit of helping others attain the same success that you've attained, or avoid the same challenges that you have avoided or that you've experienced. So the first reason that starting a podcast, and we're talking specifically in the vein of you not wanting your podcast to be an expensive hobby, if you are someone with a story to tell and you keep telling yourself that I know if I tell this story, I will help another person. I know if I tell this story, they will become 10 times better than me. If that is the constant story you're telling in your head, then you should start a podcast. Don't worry about all of the things down the line, sponsorships, affiliate income, getting Audacity to pay you or iTunes to pay you. Focus on the mission. Write down why you want to start your podcast right now. Because if you focus on why you want to start your podcast, the next question that I'm always going to ask you when you come into my space is, who is this podcast for? Because outside of you, yes, you wanted to start the podcast, so that's your reason. But now, who is the podcast for? When we talk about who the podcast for, this has three important reasons why I'm asking you who. One, who, because when you're talking on this podcast, you have to continuously have a conversation with the person that you want to help. Never lose sight of the fact that you created this so that you can serve others. The second thing is, always remember, what does that person need to hear? Because if you are remembering that this is the person that you're speaking to, a specific person, and you want to help them in a specific way, as you're having a conversation, you start to remember, oh, if I was talking to my niece and I said, oh, you need to do your homework every night, my niece is automatically going to respond and tell me, well, I don't want to do my homework. There are better things that I could do with my time than to be doing my homework. And I will respond to that immediately, because I know, listen, you probably think you have better things to be doing, but you need to be focusing on your grades and your long-term school success than to be focusing on Instagramming with these boys. Automatically, she hears me talking to her, even if she's just listening to me in her ear. I'm in her brain because I know what she's thinking. You need to be thinking about who you want to serve in that way so that you can actually address their needs and start to tune into where they are. And the third reason why it's really important for you to know who you're talking to is so that you can actually speak to who's your audience when you're going after these sponsorships. You can now speak intelligently about the audience that you've built, because it's all about the people you're serving. So if you focus on, the first thing is, if you are someone with a story to tell and you know you want to help someone either achieve what you've achieved or overcome or avoid something that you've experienced, then starting a podcast is for you. Next thing, if you know you want to start a coaching business, if you either have a coaching business or you want to start a coaching business, a consultancy, or a service-based business, having a podcast is absolutely for you. It answers all of the questions of what should you be talking about on your podcast, who are you talking to on your podcast, and where are you taking them on the journey of listening to your podcast. If you have a consulting business, a coaching business, or a service-based business, all of your answers should be focused around your ideal client or your target client. The person who you're already serving is who you should be thinking about when you have a podcast. Too many times I see business owners and entrepreneurs, they have a business, but then they want to start a podcast that's about like dating and relationships, or they want to start a podcast just about like trauma and things like that. When you have a plumbing business or you have a videography business, if your podcast has nothing to do with your business, then it absolutely is an expensive hobby. So you need to pivot that, because if you're just wasting your time. If you're talking about monetizing your podcast, you need to marry both the way you serve your clients and the way that you serve them in your listeners. So think of it like this. We can go off the topic of being a coach. You could be a service provider and you're a plumber. If you are a plumber, just like people go on YouTube, people need to hear how to solve their problem. So if they're an avid podcast listener, and my suggestion would be to be on YouTube and a podcast, because if they're dealing with a problem and they want to solve it, they can be at work figuring out why their pipes are bursting or how to avoid your pipes being bursted during the winter times. This is a conversation that you can talk about because you've experienced it and you're experiencing it all the time. Now you've created content that not just it educates your listener, but you can also lace in parts about your life. So why did you become a plumber? You can talk about that in an episode. Or what was a difficult client you experienced? You could talk about that on an episode. Make it entertaining if you like, but you don't want to have a plumbing business and be talking about child trauma on your podcast. The two have nothing to do with each other. So remember, in 2025, people are always searching you. They're searching you on Google. They're searching you on YouTube. They could be just searching a specific topic. So if you come up on a topic that doesn't necessarily bring you money, then you've wasted space using your podcast for something other than your business. Now, if your business is already making 6 and 7 figures and you just want to create another hobby, by all means, go ahead and do that. That adds to your personal brand, which is what brings me to my third point. The third point of when you should start a podcast. So if we do a recap, first, if you should do a podcast if you have a story to tell to help others either avoid a challenge or experience you've gone through, or to experience or achieve a result that you want to help someone achieve. So if you have that story, don't just go out there talking on your podcast just to share your story. Share with the intention to help your listener achieve a specific goal. That will keep your listeners coming back for more. The second reason that you should have a podcast, or when you should start a podcast, is if you already have a coaching business, a consulting business, or a service-based business, and you want to draw clients to you. Having your podcast complement your business makes your client attraction organic. And now you have content that lives on the internet for the rest of the internet's existence, who will search and find you every single time they have that problem. So long as your business serves that problem, your podcast serves as endless marketing that will live on forever for completely free. So if you have those two reasons, that's when you should start a podcast. The third and final reason that you should start a podcast, this is in the space of you don't have a business. You want to start a business, but you don't necessarily know what that might be. And you know you want to help people. So if you know these three things, you don't have a business, that's okay. But you want these things. And you know you want to start a personal brand, starting a podcast is for you. The reason that starting a podcast is for you is because it gets you speaking out to the problems that you actually want to solve. Maybe you don't have a clear story that you want to tell, which is number one. Maybe you don't have a business. But if you know you want to help people, start your podcast and focus on that mission. You don't have to have a niche just yet. You just need to focus on helping others. So if you go on there talking about what you learned in school today, if you go on there talking about the book that you read, or if you go on your podcast talking about the things that you've learned in parenting, listen, I'm learning about parenting every single day because becoming a mom, I'm just now YouTubing how to potty train my 1-year-old. So if I wanted to start a podcast that had something to do with it and I didn't have a brand, that's absolutely where I would start. I would start with what am I experiencing right now, and I would start with that podcast. Now, because you want to start a personal brand, you want to develop your personal brand, you don't have a business, and you don't necessarily know what story you want to build off of, then I would focus my podcast on helping people who are listening in my current situation. In my current situation, which requires a lot of personal development, you have to be aware of where you are in your life so that you can speak to it and attract people where they are. I know I'm just getting this motherhood thing together. I know I'm still, as much as I feel like I'm a seasoned entrepreneur, I feel like I'm a brand new entrepreneur because I'm only 7 years in and I'm still figuring a lot of things out. I definitely haven't had some of the successes that I know that I want to. So you have to be real with where you are. I know that just recording this right now, I had to put my son to sleep because my life is not the same as it was when I was a single entrepreneur just doing it in my house. So becoming very aware with yourself makes it easier for you to create a personal brand that's lasting, and it's not focused on some of the glitz and glamour or some of the vanity metrics that are out there. People start podcasts and they burn out because the topic is no longer relevant in their lives. But if you focus on your personal brand and the areas that you're growing, you'll constantly evolve and your podcast will evolve with you. And that's why I'm doing this podcast episode here live, and it's going on the Work and Play podcast lineage, if you will, because as I started the podcast to help folks who are transitioning out of corporate America, that chapter is not closed, but that is no longer the main topic of conversation in my life. So truthfully, podcasting and helping folks do podcasting can absolutely be right now, but I don't know how long I want to help in that area if that's no longer the area that people need my help. So to be honest with you, if you know you want to pick my brain about podcasting, now is the time, because I'm telling you and I'm being transparent that The life of work and play right now involves how to help you get your podcast to 6 and 7 figures in your business. And before, it was simply just trying to get you over that mindset hurdle of becoming from employee to becoming self-employed. That was the transition we were focusing on before. That's why I want you to go back and listen to the other episodes that we have on this podcast, because the journey is going to continue to evolve. 2 years down the line, I'm going to look back at this episode and I'm going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe that's, I can cringe, right? Everything is cringeworthy when you look back just 2 to 3 years from now. Sometimes you might look back 2 years from now and say, dang, I wish that was my life again. That's true. But many times you look back 2 years from now, you go, oh my God, look how far I've come. And so that is what your podcast can do for you if you don't necessarily know what you want to do yet. However, if you're focusing on that personal brand, even that alone can generate you revenue down the line, because that is leading you down the path of being a content creator professionally. And what content creators do, what they've really mastered, is to authentically share their story and connect with people where they are so that brands will want to monetize them. Now that's a longer game, because if you don't have a business right now, you just want to get familiar with your story, then start that personal brand using your podcast, and eventually the monetization will roll in. But remember, when you start, you have to focus on why you started. And if that changes, you need to check in with yourself so that you can continue to evolve on your podcast and bring your listeners along. So long as you organically build your listener base, you absolutely will keep your income flowing on the back end. And you don't have to worry about hustling so hard, because you've already developed a group of folks who trust you, know you, and they're ready to work with you in whatever you can help them in their journey. As soon as you forget that you're here to help people, that's when your money is going to change. And I promise you, you don't want to experience that. So if you hit those 3 markers, one of those 3 markers, then now is the time for you to start your podcast. Again, if you know you want to start a personal brand, that's the point that we just finished. If you know you have a coaching business, or you want to start a coaching business, a service-based business, or a consulting business, you should start a podcast. And if you know that you have a story to tell, there's a challenge that you've experienced, you just want to get it off your chest. Yes, you want to get it off your chest, but how do you help someone else get over that same challenge faster, quicker, or just avoid it altogether? If you can do those three things, then you'll absolutely be a great coach, and you'll be able to help your clients, not just as listeners, but convert from listeners to recurring clients who support you down the line as you support them in their journey. So I want to just be 100% real. You have to get started where you are. You can't worry about, oh, I don't have a bunch of listeners right now. Your listeners will come. Oh, I don't have a business right now. If you know you want to start a business, then start your podcast now, because your personal brand will continue to evolve down the line. And people love going back to the beginning and seeing where you started. That's absolutely a fact. So if 5 years are going to pass anyway, then why not get started documenting the journey with an intention of 1, serving people, and 2, benefiting monetarily from your service. Start now and grow as you go. But if you feel like you got to wait 2 or 3 years till you're ready, then 2 to 3 years when you feel like you're ready, you'll just be getting started, and you're starting your monetization journey 3 years late. So I can't stress this enough. If those are 3 reasons if you hit one of those 3 criteria, then now is the time for you to start a podcast. If you don't, then I personally may not be able to help you. Like, I'm not the person who's going to coach you on getting the most downloads or focus on being the best podcaster in the game. I'm going to listen to your episodes and tell you, where are you missing the mark? Where are you talking to general, or where are you specifically talking to your avatar? What parts you need to lean into, and then what parts you need to stop talking so much about yourself? How do you get to the point faster? These are results that are ultimately going to have people in your one-on-one calls saying, I listened to that episode, I knew I wanted to work with you. If you can get someone to actually go through that funnel of listening to your episode, identifying that they have a problem, diagnosing that, okay, this is the person that I want to work with to help me solve that problem, and then book a call with you to help you fix that problem, then you are on the right track to building your 6 and 7 figure business. And you can use your podcast to do that organically. You don't have to do ads and just have people click links and meet you and don't even know who you are. They would have known who you are because they've listened to your podcast. They've worked out with you. They've put their baby to sleep with you. They've driven to work with you. They've gotten to know you. So by the time they hop on a call with you, then they already know who you are and what you're all about. And that's why I'm even here on this conversation right now. So by the time you hop on a call, you know, okay, Ariel's got the baby. You're going to hear somebody calling saying, oh, my either baby Nato needs a change or something like that. You're going to already know what I'm all about. So you don't have to worry about, am I going to show up for you? What do I know about podcasting? You can actually go back to all of the podcasts and look at how I've evolved. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, if you feel like you're too boring, or if you feel like you don't have enough information to talk about on a podcast for long enough to draw an audience or to help someone, then you have to go back. You really do have to go back and listen to the Work and Play podcast, because you'll notice that people who you're not a good fit for, that's not who you're recording your podcast for. But if I were to tell you that I was actually getting clients from my episodes, having a conversation about how they knew that this episode is what spoke to them and they wanted to work with me, I was blown away when it actually started to happen. And I also got comments about boring. This episode is boring, or I was so you're going to get both. But you have to focus on, are you reaching the people who need to be reached? That's how you know that it's working for you. If you're really still stuck and trying to figure out, I'm not interesting enough, allow your podcast to grow you. Allow your podcast to help you develop your speaking skills. So that, again, you look back at your first episode, 150 episodes, and you don't look or sound at all like you did when you started. It's all a process, and you need to show your clients that it's a process as well. So I want to close with this. If you know that you have a story to tell and you haven't told it yet, the first thing I want you to do is map out your first episode. And if this isn't your first episode, then map out the next episode. But I need you to specifically have a structure this time. First, what's the purpose? What journey are you going to help your listener get through? If you can think about, I'm getting them from point A to point B, then you're already in the right space of thinking. What journey am I going through? Let's focus on the purpose. Second, what can they do right now just by listening to you? They're driving, they're walking, they're putting their baby to sleep. What can they do as soon as they get done with their episode? What can they do to get a quick win? How can they actually put whatever you're saying into practice for themselves? Because if you can get your clients to have a quick win before they even work with you, then the chances are when they start working with you, the results will be 10 times better. So think about that. What's your first episode? What's the purpose? What's the quick win that they can get from you? And then what's the call to action? Think about how you can actually get someone to have a conversation with you. Did they like the episode? So that you start your podcast from day one, having a two-way conversation. Many podcasters get trapped in this one-way cycle where they're just talking and nobody's responding. As I'm doing this live right now, I have one person on the live. I got to see who that is. But you want to be able to have a one-on-one, a two-way conversation with your listeners. And even if you don't get that, you know that the results are going to come because you're only speaking to a specific person. We started that from the beginning of this conversation. So if those three things hit you and you know you need to start a podcast, then the best way for you to take action is by mapping out that episode and pressing record. We'll talk about publishing and everything later. And if you get all the way through that process and you feel good about yourself, do it again. And if you get through that process again, do it again. Do it again until your confidence is up, until you feel comfortable with the fact that you can actually get people to reach their goals through listening to your podcast. You can actually get results. And now you've built a framework that can really aid you in building that coaching business, then you are on the right path. So after you've applied these steps and they work for you, the first thing I want you to do is email me, or better yet, DM me. You can just come to Instagram, @RielYoung_, DM me, and just let me know that you put these steps in place, that they worked out for you, and that you're on the journey to helping other people change their lives. However you're changing their life, whether you're a plumber or a coach, a babysitter, whatever you're doing to serve other people and change their lives, your podcast is absolutely going to serve them. So consider that your public service until you actually get to a point where you know that this body of work can absolutely get you results. Then at that point, you don't have to keep podcasting forever. This doesn't have to be a forever thing. As long as you create a body of work that really does what it's supposed to do, that body of work lives on forever. So as long as you keep your website links active, your booking links active, and all the things, that podcast is going to live on forever. If things change in your business, then you need to record a new episode so that you can bring people up to date and know how to find you. That's how this works, both from a passion perspective and a business perspective. All right? So I hope this episode really helps someone. I really hope you take this information, apply it, and go on and be successful in podcasting. And if you need any help, you know where to find me. I'm always on Instagram. I'm recording the episode right now on Instagram. And you can also email me. So the email is going to be linked below. Thank y'all for tuning in to this episode. I did all of this with my son still being asleep. So I'm about to go grab a snack. And y'all have a wonderful day. Peace out.